The one who gets wisdom loves life. The one who cherishes understanding will soon prosper. Proverbs 19:8. Hi, I'm Rob West. Wisdom doesn't just shape what we believe, it shapes how we live, including how we handle money. Today, Dr. Greg Forster joins us as we begin a new series on the cardinal virtues by looking at prudence and why faithful stewardship requires more than financial knowledge. And then it's on to your calls at 800-525-7000. That's 800-525-7000. This is Faith and Finance Live, biblical wisdom for your financial decisions. Well, we're honored to have my friend Dr. Greg Forster back on the program with us today. He is affiliate professor of biblical and systematic theology at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School and executive director of the Christian Investing Council. He's a theologian, author, and scholar whose work explores faith, work, economics, and faithful Christian stewardship. Greg, great to have you back on the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob. It's great to be back.
Greg, as you know, we're beginning a new series on financial virtues this month, rooted in the cardinal virtues of prudence, temperance, fortitude, and justice. But before we focus on our first virtue, prudence, help us frame the conversation, if you will. What do we mean by virtue, and why does that matter in how Christians handle money?
Well, virtue means being a Christ-like person. It means having Christ-like qualities in your character. Jesus stresses the importance of this, for example, when he says that we must obey God from the heart. He doesn't just want you to obey God. He wants you to obey God from your heart. So you need to have that Christ-like heart that is responding to God in the right way and for the right reasons. We can also see this in a more fearsome way when he talks about people who are not right in this way. He calls them whitewashed tombs. So, you can paint that tomb up all beautiful and it looks shiny and clean, but on the inside of the tomb, there's nothing but death. Or he talks about people who clean the cup on the outside, but they leave it filthy on the inside. So the cup looks good because it's clean on the outside, but the inside is the part you actually drink from. That's what you should be cleaning first. And the reason this is so important for how Christians handle money is that the how and why of our obedience to God are important. It's not just that we do what he says, but how we do it and why we do it matters to God.
Boy, that's such a great beginning point and an important understanding for all of us. Dr. Forster, when we talk about cardinal virtues as Christ followers, take us back a bit. Where does that tradition come from, and how have these helped believers think about faithful living throughout church history?
Yeah, this is a very old tradition. Christian ethics has always recognized that there's a distinction between moral virtues that everybody knows about, whether they've read the Bible or not, and moral virtues that Christians know about because we've read the Bible. Those are called the theological virtues, and the virtues that everyone knows about are called the cardinal virtues. It's from the Latin word for the hinge of a door, so they're literally the pivotal virtue. It's important because if there are virtues that everyone knows about, first of all, it establishes that you are responsible for your sin, even if you've never read the Bible. You can't say, well, God never spoke to me, so I'm not responsible for disobeying him. Simply by being a human being, having the nature he gave you and living in the world he put you in, you know about these moral virtues and you're accountable to them. But also, these virtues that everyone knows about are the basis of our shared life with people who don't share our beliefs. We can have a common way of life and live in peace with our neighbors because there are at least some moral virtues we all know about. And among the virtues that are known by everyone, these cardinal virtues are the four most important. They're like the top level virtues. They're meant to control how all the other virtues that we might talk about are displayed. These are kind of the first priority virtues.
Yeah. Well, after this break, we're going to dive into them. And today we're going to spend some time on the virtue of prudence, what it is, why has it often been understood as the virtue that essentially helps to guide the others, Where do we find it in Scripture, and how might it relate to how we manage God's money and live as a faithful steward? We're beginning a new series today. It's the Financial Virtues series. We're focused on prudence, or what you might say, wisdom, and we're joined by our friend, Dr. Greg Forster. We'll take a quick break and then come back with much more just around the corner, and then time for your phone calls. Stay with us. Wisdom doesn't just shape what we believe, it shapes how we live, and that includes how we handle God's money. Today we're kicking off a new series. It's our Financial Virtues series, and we're focused on the virtue of prudence. We're joined today by Dr. Greg Forster. He is Affiliate Professor of Biblical and Systematic Theology at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. He's also the Executive Director of the Christian Investing Council. Dr. Forster, I appreciate before the break how you unpacked where these cardinal virtues come from, and we took a look at how they show up in church history. Now, some of our listeners may hear virtue and think mainly in terms of moral behavior. So how would you explain the difference between simply following financial rules, let's say, and becoming the kind of person who embodies this in their everyday lives as we think about it related to money?
Well, what God cares most about is his personal relationship with people. The whole point of salvation is to restore us to fellowship and communion with God. He made us to love us and for us to love him back, and he wants that relationship. Now, if you think about your own relationships, you'd never say about someone in your life, like your spouse, your siblings, your parents, your children, your friends, you'd never say that as long as they do the morally right thing, you don't care how they do it or why they do it. I mean, just for starters, imagine if you raised your children that way.
Right.
If you didn't care about why they did what they did, as long as they did what they were supposed to, right? You would not be setting them up for success, and your relationship with them would not be very strong. So if we think about money, if you are only looking for the minimum that you can do so that you can feel like you've done your job using your money for God, that's not putting you into relationship with God. What we want is to really start by saying, this is all God's money. How can I use all of it for his purposes? And that brings my whole self into relationship with God through the way I'm using my money.
Wow. Yeah, that's well said. It's not a checklist, but it's really relational, and it's loving God through worship of him, and that includes how we handle his money. What an important distinction. All right, let's dig into this first virtue that we're focused on today of prudence. What is prudence, Dr. Forster, and why has it often been understood as the virtue that helps guide all the others?
Well, you know how they say the ends don't justify the means.
Yes.
We've all heard that saying. And just because you have the right goals, it doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want in order to reach those goals, no matter how bad it is, how wasteful it is. Once you've decided what your goals are, prudence is about figuring out the right way to accomplish those goals. Prudence means figuring out the right means to use to accomplish your ends. And this is pivotal because everything's abstract as long as you're only thinking about goals. I can sit here and think, wow, it would be great if I were a more Christ-like person. You know, if I never snapped at my kids, if I never sat here and daydreamed instead of doing my work. That's my goal. I want to, not daydream when I should be doing my work, or I want to, control my anger more, or whatever it is. It's all abstract until you think about, how am I going to make that happen? What's the concrete action I'm going to take to move toward that goal? This is why we say prudence shapes all the other virtues, because prudence is where the rubber hits the road. What's my plan of action for carrying out my goals?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Where do we see this idea of prudence in Scripture, and how does practicing it draw us closer to Christ and perhaps form us more deeply as his disciples?
Yeah, the probably the most obvious place to see it in Scripture is the book of Proverbs. If you really want to understand the virtue of prudence, just think about this idea of it's not just what my goals are, it's how I accomplish them. And then just sit with the book of Proverbs and read through it, and you'll see God cares intensely, not only about what we want to accomplish, but how we do it. Proverbs really hits that repeatedly. But there are many other places in the Bible we can see this. I've mentioned a couple of sayings of Jesus. I'll mention a couple more. Think about when Jesus says, be as wise as serpents, but as innocent as doves.
Yeah.
So setting those goals, be as innocent as doves. But also, Jesus is saying, think carefully about how you're going to get it done. Be as shrewd as a serpent when you're thinking about the how. Or think about how Paul in Ephesians says, look carefully where you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time. That idea of make the best use of your time is a prudence, a calling to prudence. Prudence draws us closer to Christ because if you really know God and you really love God, you're going to want to be the best steward that you can be. It's the difference between checking boxes, like you said, which keeps yourself, your personality, distant from God while your actions are, outwardly conforming to him. It's the difference between that and really giving yourself over to God.
So in financial terms, what does prudence help us see clearly that perhaps we might otherwise miss?
Well, in his book, Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis has a wonderful line. He has a chapter on the 4 cardinal virtues, so he's using this same schema. One of the things he says is giving money to a charity is not virtuous if you don't care whether that charity is a fraud or not. And if you're giving money to a good cause, but you don't care if the money's well used or if it's squandered, you're not genuinely seeking the good of other people. So prudence means we care about whether our investments actually perform in terms of God's goals, which includes making a financial return, but also accomplishing God's other goals that he can accomplish through our use of finance.
Yes.
For example, some people have too little risk in their portfolios because they think risk is inherently bad. They're worried about squandering, and so they have too little risk. Other people have too much risk in their portfolios because they think, well, I need to trust God, and I'm not being faithful unless I take every risk I can to potentially, accomplish more goals for God. Prudence means knowing the right amount of risk to take, considering all the factors together. Now, there are different goals that Christians can legitimately pursue with their investing. Putting money into missional businesses is good. Having influence as an investor in a mainstream company is also good. Prudence is the virtue that weighs these different goals and sets priorities when we can't accomplish everything all at once.
Very good. We've got just about 45 seconds left. What's one practical step you could leave with our listeners today that want to grow in prudence?
Well, at the Christian Investing Council, we're helping Christians think about how their faith impacts their investing. So my one practical step is look at the different options you have for your retirement savings, for your other investments, and ask, why is it that my money is invested in this option rather than the other options that my funds might be invested in? Is that decision putting your principles into practice better than other options would? CIC's published a statement on Christian investing you might find helpful. You can find that at christianinvestingcouncil.org.
Wow. This has been so rich, and we'll have to have you back because we just scratched the surface. Dr. Forster, thanks for your time today.
Thanks so much, Rob. I appreciate it.
Folks, prudence is wisdom in action, choosing the right means to faithfully pursue God's ends. All right, your calls are next. The number, 800-525-7000. Call right now. We'll be right back.
The opinions offered during this program represent the personal or professional opinions of the participants, given for informational purposes only. Any information provided is not intended to replace advice from a financial, medical, legal, or other professional who understands your specific situation.
Great to have you with us today on Faith and Finance Live. I'm Rob West. Well, we're going to take your calls and questions today, help you apply God's wisdom to your financial decisions and choices. You can call right now. We've got some lines open. The number 800-525-7000. That's 800-525-7000. We would love to dive into your question around giving or investing. Perhaps it's staying on budget or paying down debt. Maybe it's preparing and selecting the next steward. We can talk about any of those questions and more. Again, that number, 800-525-7000. Let's dive in. We're going to begin in Chicago today. Joy, go right ahead. All right. Let's try Oswego and Lupe. How about, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Great. How can I help you?
Yes, hello to you and everyone. And
thank you.
Just like to ask for advice as far as my daughter that's going to turn 20 in December. We're trying to figure out how she could start building credit. Okay. She's not currently working right now. She just got her license for a nail technician. But we're just trying to guide her. I feel like I am lost myself. I've been in my job for 25 years in the medical field, so she's not interested in anything like that, but I would like for her to start, building her credit.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, very good. And the goal, when you're just starting out, is to, okay. Yeah, excellent. The goal is to build positive credit history while avoiding debt. And so we certainly don't want to take on any debt. We don't want to pay any interest. We don't want to develop that cycle of using debt to live beyond our means. And yet we recognize we live in a system that requires, or it's helpful to have, cost-effective to have credit over time, whether you're renting an apartment or borrowing money to buy a car that fits into your budget. All of those things require good credit. So there's a couple of ways to go. One would be to become an authorized user on a parent's credit card. So, for instance, your card, if you have a long history of on-time payments and a low balance or no balance because you pay it off every month, then your daughter could be added to your account to benefit from your account's history, assuming the card issuer reports authorized users to the credit bureaus, which most of them do. Now, the risk there is, even if you don't ever give her the card or she doesn't have access to charge anything, the risk is if you had a missed payment or you had a balance that crept up over 30% of the limit, meaning you had a high credit utilization, then she would get your negative history along with the positive. So you just have to be careful there. But it is a strategy a lot of people use. The second, which is a little safer because it's, separate from you, is to open a starter credit card in her own name. It could be a student card. It could be Capital One has some cards that are designed specifically for those with little to no credit just starting out. Could be a great option. I suspect if she's 19, she's probably already started to get the solicitations. I wouldn't just take whatever comes in the mail. I would probably, look and do some research maybe on Bankrate or NerdWallet and find out who has the best credit cards. The Saver card from Capital One was one that a lot of students use. But she's got to be very disciplined, and you've got to make sure there's safeguards in place because, again, we wouldn't want to enable her to live beyond her means, not understanding the dangers of debt and get into a difficult situation, which leads me to the third option, which again is more safe. And that would be what's called a secured credit card, where you simply put a certain amount on deposit with a bank. And you'd again want to research who offers the most compelling secured cards, but you put a certain amount on deposit. Let's say it's $200 or $300. They give you a limit equal to what's on deposit. You charge against it with budgeted items. So let's say there was a monthly subscription that she was already planning on. She's going to do it anyway. And it's budgeted, meaning she's got the money for it. She could let that hit the secured card every month. She pays it off in full. Now she's starting to get some positive credit history reporting to her credit file. And the nice part is that because it's secured, there's no risk. Because worst case, she charges up to the limit, $200. She's unable to pay it. Well, they're just going to take the money on deposit, pay it off, and she's done. And so it's secured by the balance of the deposit, which just means there's no risk of her charging money beyond what she has the ability to pay. So if she had, let's say, one card, either secured or unsecured, with a small recurring expense like gas or a streaming subscription, and she paid the statement balance in full every month, she would pay no interest. She'd keep low utilization, meaning the balance versus the limit. And then she would, over time, begin to build some credit history. But let me stop there and just get your thoughts on those ideas.
Oh, I really liked and very helpful with those three ideas. I was considering adding her possibly on my credit card, even though they are asking me for her Social Security number.
Yes.
Is that something that I do need to give, like besides her name and our home address, but she still currently lives at home? Is that something safe to give over the phone? Her Social Security number, and that
it is necessary, and it can be safe. So it's necessary, meaning if she's going to be added as an authorized user, and you've weighed the considerations I mentioned about all the history reporting, then yes, you would have to give them her social. And it is safe so long as you know who you're talking to, meaning you initiated the call to your credit card company using the phone number on the back of the card, not somebody calling you and claiming to be from your credit card company. But yes, as long as you initiate it, you know you're calling the right company, then yes, you could give them that social and add her as an authorized user. So, Lupe, I hope that helps. You sound like a great mom. Hey, stay on the line. I want to send you a resource to pass along to her that I think will be a real blessing. It's called Open Hands Finance. We'll be right back. Great to have you with us today on Faith and Finance Live. I'm Rob West. We're taking your calls and questions today. I've got room for you. If you have a question, call right now. 800-525-7000. Let's go back to the phones. Let's see. We'll head to Joy, and Joy is in Chicago. Go right ahead.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. And my grandson is moving to Bali, and I'm just wondering, would it be better if he sends the money he makes home or start a bank account there?
Yeah. How long is he planning to be there, Joy?
2 years. He has a limit. His company will only say 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, so if he's planning to return to the U.S. in 2 years or less, it's going to be wise to keep, a good bit of his savings in the U.S. This avoids having all of his assets exposed to the Bali banking system or currency, and that's going to make it easier to pay U.S. bills or invest for the future. He's probably just going to want enough money in Indonesia just to cover living expenses and maybe a small emergency fund while he's there. But I would consider having him transfer excess savings beyond his living expenses and an emergency fund back to the U.S. periodically rather than letting a large balance accumulate overseas. Does that make sense? Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a great experience. I think he needs to check into the exchange rates and the transfer fees before moving the money. And, he's just got to remember, as a U.S. citizen, he's going to need to report and pay U.S. taxes on his worldwide income, even while he's living overseas, though there are some tax credits and so forth and exclusions depending on his situation. But I think the big idea here is just keep enough money locally there in Indonesia based on what he needs to live, but don't feel obligated to keep all of your savings overseas. I think the bulk of it should stay here. And, the reporting and tax rules can be pretty complex. So it'd be worth him connecting with a CPA or a tax professional who really specializes in expat taxation before he makes any major decisions. But Joy, thank you for calling. Let us know if we can help further. Let's go to Indiana. Greg, go ahead.
Hi, Rob. Love the show.
Thank you.
I have a question for you about retirement. So I'm currently 61, and I'd like to retire in a couple of years. I'd be 63, and my wife would be 61. And right now, our portfolio is about 80% in pre-tax, and investments, so IRAs and my 401k, and we have about 20% in Roth IRAs. And based on our living expenses and how much we're going to have to pull from our portfolio every year, my advisor is basically having us pull from the pre-tax accounts first. And if we do that, then we're going to be over the ACA threshold to get any subsidies. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to pay for health care and wondering if I should consider like a Roth IRA conversion or some way to lower that, what are they, magi they call it, right?
Yeah, modified
Does that
adjusted
make
gross
sense?
income. Yeah, it sure does. And this is exactly the kind of planning opportunity you want to think about before retirement. And the key really isn't managing the investments in the portfolio. It's managing taxable income, as you said, the modified adjusted gross income during the years before Medicare. So since the ACA premium tax credits are based on income, the way you take withdrawals makes a pretty significant difference. So if your portfolio is currently 80% pre-tax, 20% Roth, and taking all the withdrawals from the pre-tax will increase your MAGI and could therefore reduce or eliminate the ACA tax credits, I think, to your point. So it may make sense to use a combination of pre-tax and Roth contributions to manage that taxable income, because those qualified Roth withdrawals are not going to increase the ACA calculation. A Roth conversion could be beneficial, but the timing is important because the conversion increases the modified adjusted gross income in the year it's done. So doing one during the ACA years could reduce or eliminate those premium tax credits for that year as well. So many people instead consider partial Roth conversions in the years before they retire while they're still working, only if you're in a favorable tax situation or after you reach Medicare at age 65, when the ACA subsidies are no longer a factor, although then you're just going to have to factor in the IRMA on the additional premium on the Medicare. So the timing depends on your current tax bracket while you're working, your expected retirement income, your long-term goals, and then future RMDs. So I wouldn't automatically convert now just to qualify for the subsidies. I think the better approach is probably to work with, and maybe you've already got this, a tax-savvy financial planner or a CPA to project your income over the next several years and coordinate those withdrawals and any Roth conversions so you balance current tax savings, ACA credits, future RMDs, and then the Medicare IRMA, and try to find the sweet spot between all of it. You're going to have to make some assumptions because we don't know future tax rates, but the value of those ACA subsidies can be substantial, so it's worth running the numbers before you make any conversions.
Right. That's not complicated at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean, It's just, a day in the life, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I guess the other thing that I keep thinking about is they say that you should keep your Roth accounts for later in your retirement years and not pull from that. But
yeah,
I'm going to have to pull from that in order to, get these subsidies. So again, it's like a balance.
It is, and I think that's where you've got to just run all the scenarios, and that's where a savvy financial planner could be great, and they have some pretty sophisticated software that can run all these scenarios for you once you plug in your current tax rate, your mix of pre-tax versus after-tax retirement accounts, your future expected income in retirement. We can plug in, current tax rates, and then we can just run all kinds of scenarios. You're going to have to make some assumptions, but you can probably find that sweet spot, and then you update it every year and react accordingly.
Sure. Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Greg. We appreciate your call today, sir. God bless you. 800-525-7000 is the number to call. We're taking your questions today on anything financial. When we come back in our final segment, we'll try to get to as many calls as we can. I've got room, in addition to those holding, for perhaps 2 more phone calls. beyond what I've got right now. And so if you've got a question, something happening in your financial life, now is the time to call. Again, that number is 800-525-7000. Hey, we hear from some incredible Moody listeners and others that just love the program. You're so gracious and your encouragement. We really appreciate it. It is a great opportunity, though, for me to remind you that Faith and Finance is listener supported. So we bring you this program every day and all of the resources we create here at Faith 5 with an amazing team that goes well beyond me. I just show up and talk all day. We do that because of your listener support. And so if you would if you love the program and you'd like to be a part of making sure Faith 5 continues in the future, we just simply invite you to become a Faith 5 partner. Partners support us at $35 a month or $400 a year. And as a way of saying thanks, we send you partner benefits, including 4 issues of our magazine, a quarterly ministry update, all of our new studies and devotionals, and pro access to the Faith 5 app. Just go to faithfi.com/give to learn more. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us today on Faith and Finance Live. I'm Rob West. We're taking your calls and questions today. Let's head right back to the phones. We'll head to Mississippi. Susie, how can I help?
Oh, thank you for taking our calls and helping us. I have one question.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I have 4 months emergency fund. I don't have a retirement, but I live off my Social Security and I own my home. And I have $75,000 on a CD in a bank that I just leave. Something came out today from the American Gold Reserve. I don't have any gold. I couldn't touch it. I don't have the money. But it said that they could take $5 gold pieces for $4.69, a minimum of 5. Since I don't have big money like other people, should I do that or not do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be careful there. So right now you said your house is paid off. You have about $75,000 in the bank, and then on top of that, you have 4 months emergency funds. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so normally what we would say is you wouldn't want generally more than 5% of your investable assets in gold. And so if we were to say, okay, let's set your emergency fund aside, that's not investable. But beyond that, let's say, we take the $75,000, that'd be around $3,750, 5%. If we went to a full 10%, which I would say is the most you'd want to do, that'd be $7,500. So I think somewhere in that $3,700 to $7,000 is probably, the right move for you. But keep in mind, the reason I don't love gold for you here is you don't have a lot in the way of assets to depend on, and gold doesn't produce an income, so no interest and no dividends. Its price can be quite volatile, more volatile than stocks and bonds, at least historically that's been true. And, it's very illiquid because if you're buying physical gold, now in order for you to sell it, you've got to find a dealer and you might have to pay a premium and it's just not easy, not to mention the fact that you've got to store it and somewhere safe. So I just think, for somebody who's got, plenty of retirement assets and they want to have a way to have a hedge against inflation or against a situation where we had a geopolitical event, then I think having that 5 to 10% position in gold makes sense. Somebody in your situation where you've got a nice nest egg, the $75,000, but you might need it in the future for long-term care or something like that. I would just be very careful about having something like gold that's illiquid, that can be expensive to sell, and that you have to store, and again, has no income or dividend associated with it. Does that make sense, though?
It does, and I always hear you, and you always say that you don't talk to folks if you have less than $100,000, and I know I'm nowhere near that, so that's why I needed to know.
Well, I'm happy to do it, and let me just clarify for the benefit of others, I'm happy to talk to anybody. We've got a lot of people that call this program that are in a really desperate situation, and we just want to serve God's people no matter how much or how little you have. What you probably have heard me say is that many advisors, their business model prevents them from, or their company prevents them from taking accounts where they're managing it of less than 100,000. In some cases, it's less than 250,000. So that's, probably what you hear me referring to. That has nothing to do with me. I'm not an advisor. I just lead this nonprofit ministry to equip God's people. But you will find that a lot of financial advisors are unable to take investment accounts of less than 100,000. So hopefully that helps, Susie. If I can help you further along the way, don't hesitate to reach out. LaDonna's in Chicago. LaDonna, go right ahead.
Hi. I was calling. I listen to you all the time, and I'm not calling about investments or anything. I have a lot of debt that I am overwhelmed with, and I'm trying to get my life together and get it on track. My husband passed away a while ago, and I used all my savings that I had, and I'm just I don't know what to do right now. I got into a program where they're getting my interest rates reduced so that I can pay a little bit at a time toward my bills, but I'm not seeing anything good out of it. And I don't know what to do.
What type of program is it, LaDonna? What's the name of the company you're working with?
Morning Law.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that. Are they describing it as credit counseling or debt management, or are they calling it debt settlement? Is there any terms that you recognize?
Settlement.
Yeah, debt settlement.
Debt settlement.
That is not something I recommend at all, because the strategy of debt settlement, if that's what it is that they stop paying your bills and let you get past due, and then they try to come in behind you after you get past due and use that as negotiating, ability to try to negotiate a reduced payoff. The problem is it can trash your credit in the meantime. It just creates a lot of problems. Instead, what I would like for you to do, LaDonna, is visit with my friends at Christian Credit Counselors. They're a wonderful ministry. They're all believers. And they're going to get you into a program where you don't have to stop paying your bills. You don't get past due. You don't have collections calling. You don't trash your credit. In fact, if you're behind because of the debt settlement, they're going to get you into the program. And often the first thing that happens when you get into debt management or credit counseling is they re-age the account. That means you get brought current immediately. And as long as you make on-time payments, then you stay current. But the real benefit is they're going to get the interest rate down to somewhere between 0 and 10%. So what I'd like for you to do as a next step here, LaDonna, if you're interested, is reach out to ChristianCreditCounselors.org. In fact, easier than that, just go to faithfi.com/CCC, faithfi.com/CCC. And that'll give you the phone number. You can contact them on the internet if you prefer. But you're going to schedule a phone call where they're going to review your situation. They'll tell you exactly what they can do for you. And they've worked with thousands of our listeners, LaDonna, and they'll get you pointed in the right direction, okay?
Okay, sounds good. I so appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, LaDonna. God bless you, and we appreciate your kind remarks about the program. Let's head to Mary in Georgia. Mary, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I paid off my mortgage finally. It was a long mortgage in February, and they at first didn't even recognize it. I sent a personal check in. I didn't warn them or anything, and they kept trying to charge me. And then finally, I kept calling, and so they said, you don't owe anymore. But I haven't gotten the deed to my house, and it was in February that I paid it off.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I think you need to understand, and we may be talking about the same thing, is, but paying off the mortgage doesn't create a new deed. If you already own the home, you were already on the deed. So that doesn't change. What changes is that the lender's lien against the property is released, and you should be notified that that has been done. So what you want to do is you want to call the mortgage lender or the loan servicer and ask whether they have processed and recorded the mortgage satisfaction, or what also might be called a release of lien. And it varies by state, but essentially when they record that, then you want to ask if they have mailed you the recorded release or if it's still being processed. And you can check with the county clerk or the recorder of deeds in your county and see if the lien release has been recorded. Many counties allow you to search property records online, but you're not going to get a new deed. You're just looking for that mortgage satisfaction or the release of lien would be the two terms you would typically see.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, okay.
Now, if they have not filed the release and it's been several months, then you're going to want to ask them when it will be recorded and ask for a timeline. Typically, they're required to record that within a certain period after the loan has been paid. But hopefully it's already in process, and you could even verify it online by searching your county records office. But you're not going to get a new deed. You're just looking for that release of lien. Hey, Mary, thanks for your call today. We appreciate you being on the program. Quickly to Florida, Spring Hill. Rich, go ahead. Rich, are you with us? All right, we don't hear Rich, so we're going to wrap it up there. Hey, folks, one of the things I so appreciate about the opportunity to talk to you each day is just your genuine desire to be found faithful in managing God's resources. Our goal each day is just to help you do that. We want to help you hear, well done, good and faithful servant, as you manage God's money. And here's what we know. The way we manage money is one of the clearest indicators into what's going on in our lives spiritually. Later this summer, we're going to celebrate 100 years of Moody Radio and, going all the way back to Larry Burkett. Not that he was here 100 years ago, but he was one of the first and really the first financial program on these airwaves. And Larry has taught from the beginning, and I know many of you mention Larry's name all the time, that we need to start with the idea that God owns it all. And then we need to be found faithful. And then we've been charged as managers of God's money to be generous and to keep our lifestyle in check and to hold God's money loosely and to live with contentment. And that message has been the same on these airwaves since Larry Burkett first started with Money Matters. And the reason that hasn't changed is because everything we do here at Moody is about God's Word. And these are truths that we find in Scripture. They don't change. Biblical wisdom is always right. It's always relevant. It's never going to change. It's not a fad. Doesn't change with the tax code. Doesn't change with the economy. It's always truth. And so that's what we base our advice on each day. I hope today you found something helpful and encouraging. I'm certainly thankful for the team that made all of this possible. I couldn't do it without them. Today, Tahira, Taylor, Josh, and Omar. I want to say a big thanks to everybody here at Faith Fi as well and this extended team that makes this possible. Faith and Finance Live is a partnership between Moody Radio and Faith Fi. Again, if you want to support the ministry, just go to faithfi.com/give and then come back and join us tomorrow. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.